Hello and welcome to Late Night Creatures with me, your host, Peter DeToro. Today is going to be a bit of a different episode from what we usually do. I'm just doing some work for my personal benefit recently. And basically, what I've done is I've selected some of my favorite episodes that we've done, and I'm taking those drawings and taking the creatures that we've drawn in those and transferring them to a more professional, more of a scene rather than just a gaggle of creatures. I'm calling these my reprised drawings since all of the creatures are reprising their roles and in the show. This is different from our usual thing in that for a few reasons. One, I'm going to be doing a bunch of stuff that I never do because I'm just working on my drawings as I normally work on them, which I'd say is interesting because you as the audience, you really never get to see my normal drawing process. You see my late night creatures, let's fill a page in 30 minutes type style. But I'm not going to rush myself on this. We're going to get as far as we get, do our normal 30 minutes, and then we'll be done. So, the first episode that I'm retconning and reprising is the robots episode. So I'll go through what I've done so far so we're all caught up. So the scene that I'm thinking is, in the old one we had these two scientists down at the bottom here. Get a pointer. Down at the bottom here, observing the robots in this sort of echo chamber type of room. So for this drawing, I've brought the scientists to the front and I've put the robots into their own separate cages each. And so they're observing them in a different format, which gives me an ability to detail them and then also to detail the robots. So right here in this first one, I have our bird, the first one we drew in that episode, if I remember correctly. So I have him here facing forward using his propeller. I used a motion blur to make it look a little better than it did in the old one. And then over here, I have our flashlight, who was down here in the first episode, or fourth, technically, but the first time we drew them. And I brought him here. And he's looking a little more sinister. He has a broken wire now. Not sure what he's up to, but he's definitely up to something. And so that's where we are. So I've drawn these two. So the third thing that I'm going to draw in here is, of course, our big fish. That was sort of the focal point, I'd say, of this drawing originally. So now that I've rambled about what's going on, I think we should go ahead and get into it. So I'm going to be cutting back and forth between the two pictures a lot just to make sure I'm getting details and stuff like that right. So I apologize if it's a bit jarring, but I don't really have a way to smoothly transition between them. So it's probably just going to be, popping in between. So the first thing with the fish, I'd say, was probably the mouth. He had that huge mouth. And this is also a very small cage for what he is, because he was significantly larger than the flashlight and the bird. And so one idea that I had, and I'm going to try it, is that we take what we got right now, and we sort of make this first one into a hallway type of structure, where we bring this back a bit on either side, and then we bring it down, make sure that all lines up. Doing some architecture on the fly here. We have that. Bring this over. And so we have this this type of structure here. Bring in that last piece. And so we have this hallway structure. I actually don't need this line. We have this hallway structure here, and so maybe he's set further in, and he can come out into the observation room. And this allows me to, instead of making him the focal point, where the focal point really seems to be the flashlight and the bird, we have this big robot that was the original focal point, more pushed to the back and more a background element. So I think that's what we're going to do. We'll see how that works. But before I do that, I do want to give this little inlet some color, just so that it is as it should be. Now we'll get into drawing the actual fish. I haven't done much standard drawing, but we're about to get to it. I promise. I promise we're about to get there. So the fish, he had this huge mouth. And I'm trying to draw them different than how they were. But for him, it's kind of difficult because I don't think seeing him from any angle other than the one that I did originally really does him justice. And so I think we're going to do him from the same angle but inverted, so that it's still different and it's still a change of pace, but not to the point that it devalues his design. Or its design. I mean, it's a robot. Who cares? So we have, he had these, I guess they were lips. These kind of segmented robotic fish lips here. They did a fantastic job of being odd. And so we need to get those in. Those were important. That's sort of what that is not what we were looking at. Another thing that's going to happen a lot in this episode is I'm going to be fixing a lot of things because I'm going to be making more mistakes. And that's not for any reason other than this requires a touch more accuracy and precision than Late Night Creatures usually does because I'm using reference. It's a similar problem that I had when doing what I did for episode 10. And then teeth. I believe there was, we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on the top, 3 on the bottom. We'll keep those numbers. Just try and make them a little more sinister, sharper, a more aggressive point to them. That looks nice for the 5. Then we had 1. Oh, nice. These are like piranha teeth. And then there was more of a gap. And then 2, 3. How's that looking? That looks all right. And then that mouth was pretty standard. Loop in there. Awesome. Now here comes the head, which is going to probably be more of an issue, just because I'm going to try and do some interesting stuff with the eyes. This is by far one of the most thought out Late Night Creatures that we've ever done. But this is just personal work that I really wanted to work on, but did not have the time today. So I'm doing it for Late Night Creatures instead of our usual thing. And I think that's all right because, you know, change is fun, and we've been doing a lot of odd things in these recent episodes. Been making a lot of changes to our norm. And I think that's just great. So I think I'm going to have him a little angrier. Attempt to make him look angrier. I think he sort of has these kind of metal pieces that can shut down over the lights in his eyes to make him expressive. And so we'll bring those into play here. This doesn't look too good. I may restart this entire fish because I'm not liking how it's turning out. I'm probably going to do that, actually. Sometimes you got to do that. I don't like to... I'm falling into my Late Night Creatures trap of kind of just going and not drawing. and not thinking while I draw, or not thinking as much. So I'm gonna say goodbye to that, and we're gonna start over. That was about 10 minutes of not wasted time, but it's a good time to show what I didn't want to do. So I want to figure out a fun thing to do with this fish, and I kind of have an idea now. Rather than showing the, yes, okay, yeah, they are looking at less of a gallery and more sort of just observation tanks, more of an aquarium or a zoo than a gallery. So I think I'm gonna have the fish. I think this little door here exists to stop the fish from breaking through the glass because it definitely can. But I think it's definitely also going to try. And so I am going to draw it from a different angle. And we aren't going to see its full body, but we are going to see a very close up of its face. So let's get that going. One. There are 3 lips on either side. They go further back as they go. And then there, he had a bit under him as well. So we'll make sure that that sort of comes around at the bottom. Want to make it look a little softer, but from this angle, that's a little difficult, especially since he's pressed against something. And it's just going to be a little more difficult. But it's all right. Then we have these moving up. And I can't remember if there was anything over the... There is. Okay, so then we have... Does that look like a go in? Yes, it does. Although I'm not sure if... So then we have this part here. And I'm not sure you'll be able to tell that he has that part up top. I mean, you will. But not very much. And then we have, so we have 5 teeth. Where does this center tooth lie? Alright, I'm going to forget trying to match the tooth number, because that right now seems foolish. So I'm just going to go straight with these aggressive stalactite type of teeth. I was trying to make sure I said the right one, because you don't always get it right. There we go. And then I think I still want to have that gap, so we may just do, wait, that is not the right angle. 1, then 2. This looks dangerous, and that's what I want. 3. There we go. That's more of what we're looking for sure. So we can fill that in. Make sure all of our bases are covered. Go through. So filling in black is bad and good because one, it fills it in, but it doesn't always fill it in all the way. And so a lot of times you still have to trace the outline, which is what I'm doing right now. Or else we'll get little white pixels that will get noticed. But this is looking better. This is a more interesting scene with him, sort of. It makes it seem like there's more going on than what we know is going on. I need to fix this before I continue doing that, because it got uneven. So let me go and fix that real quick. Wonderful. Awesome. And then we get the eyes, which are... Did they ever go? No, they pretty much stayed in that circle. There we are. There's eye number 1. And eye number 2. Yeah, I'm liking this more for sure. This is definitely a better direction to take it. this fish is a fairly simple design compared to the bird, which is that was complex to draw, and I'm very glad I didn't do it here because that fish, man, he just I made him face forward just like I'm doing with the fish, but for the bird that was a mistake. Well, not a mistake. I mean, it turned out all right, but it was significantly harder to draw him at that angle and then also with his mouth open. It was both a fun and a stressful time. So now I'm going to go back to this and sort of just crack the walls in a bit where I think that it would crack, because he really is pushing to get through. So we have just a couple there, and one right there, and we probably have one sort of barely breaking in through the roof, and maybe one more about here. That looks all right. So now I have to go through and color the fish. So this is going to be a lot of jumping back and forth so I can see what colors things are. So these are the same color that the walls around him are, which means I'm probably going to need to change the colors that the walls are. And I should do that. I will make them the same color as the other walls because you can still tell because of the perspective. And then, I'm going to encounter the same problem either way. But now it's alright. If that was not the right layer. Another thing, I'm having to keep track of way more layers in this episode, which is good time. I do think that this is coming out. I have the next one ready, but I don't think we're gonna get to it. Just in case I'm glad that I stopped myself from rushing though, because I do really want this to be good work. And if I had rushed it, it may not have been. So I'm glad that I took the time to go back and make this what I wanted it to be. Awesome. These teeth are crazy scary. Honestly, this would be a terrifying job to have. And there we go. He kind of looks like a deranged iron giant from this perspective. But that's alright. Okay. I think we're on the path to starting to shade. Not how we usually shade, mind you. It's going to be the way that I shade my my other creature drawings. But before we do that, I gotta get rid of all this. Not that. And then I'm gonna throw that same gradient that I used in the last drawing. I'm gonna throw that on there real quick behind everything. I think I'm gonna, nope, not like that. I think I'm gonna do it, yep, I'm gonna do it that way. And then bring everything back. I want to add the floor in with him real quick. Then that should do it. I don't know if I want it to be darker. I do, actually. I do know that I want it to be darker. So I'm going to get rid of everything real quick. Make a new layer underneath the gradient. Make it black. Put the gradient over it again. Bring everything back. And then I'm going to bring that down. So there we go. Now that's a nice color. Oh, can you not see? Oh, that's not a problem on my end, but I'm sure it would have gotten mentioned if it was. Okay, so we got that done. Now I'm gonna shade. So for shading, I like to use a fun little tool called the airbrush because it's great. It is a good tool, and it is very, very useful because it makes very nice shading. At least in my opinion, it makes very nice shading because you don't have to really blend it, and it's a good time. So the light is coming from above them, so that means I'm gonna need to shade the underside of most of the creatures, which is also a direction of shading that I don't do often. So I'm delving into some newer territory with this, as you do. I don't even think I'm gonna finish this one in this episode. So if you didn't really enjoy this whole deal, I'm sorry. We'll be back to our regularly scheduled program next week. But I just really wanted to work on this stuff, and I wanted to share it with the people who were watching today. So I decided to do that. But we will be back to our normal, more comedic, because this has also been a less chill, more artsy fartsy episode. But you see, I mean, it's mainly the airbrush that makes it look like so smooth. But I mean, it's just the shading's just nice, in my opinion. It makes everything look rounder and more. The airbrush gives it a lot more depth than just using regular dynamic shading. So I think it's a good tool. If you're getting into digital art, I would not shy away from it, because I did for a really long time. I was like, I don't need an airbrush. I'll draw in the shading like you normally do. But for me, the airbrush is sort of just a nice little way for me to get some nice shading done. And I think that I've gotten some finesse with it. So maybe maybe it's not entirely the tool, but I mean, you never know. There we go. But yes, this is just personal work that I'm glad I'm getting done with. It's sort of with the not shtick, but the draw and the interest that Late Night Creatures has for me. It gives me a bit more motivation to try and do things the absolute best I can do them. So we have Alright, I think that's done with the shading on the bird. Let me look. Oh yeah. Good. That is some good. Maybe I'm going to see how this looks if I shade those under eyes a bit. And then I need to shave under here. Not shave, shade. Shade under there. And I think that'll do it for the bird. Got 6 minutes. I'm not going to rush. I'll move on to the scientist because the flashlight and the fish, I have to do shading and lighting for, and I'm not going to have the time to finish either of those. But I can probably do a good amount of work on both of the scientists while we're here. So I think their light, the robots, theirs is coming from above. The scientists, their light is coming from the robots. So we're going to need a bigger brush for sure. Maybe this. For sure. Yeah, that works. Go here. Now we just sort of need to shade most of the back side of this one's of their heads. So probably to around there. Now shading larger areas with the airbrush is where it gets a bit dicey, because then it becomes a much more of a struggle to blend. But I have confidence in myself. I can make it work real quick. There we go. I may go back and touch that up more later, make it look a little less streaky, but I think it's all right. And then I can go under here, make sure that that's getting the backlight that it needs. I have to shade the body. I should probably just grab a bigger brush, yeah. Okay, I was using too small of a brush for the space. That will make it a bit better. There we go. That's what we wanted. That's some nice. You know how like at the end of a Pokemon episode, it would all get like the heavily shaded and stylized. That's the look we're going for, and we got it there. got that Pokemon narrator style. All right. Then we gotta do the one with the bulging green eye. That'll be fun, cause he's just a nice man with a bulging green eye. And then I added the subtle detail of his tag being out because I think he's sort of the dopier one. He's more of the scientist's assistant rather than the scientist. I want to shade his, since he has an interesting shaped head, we want to shade him so he brings out the contours of his, I don't know what shape that is. It's sort of like flat bottomed bowling pin. That works. That's a good descriptor. We have to wrap up soon, but I can wrap up with them being done here. All right. Well, there we go. I'm going to call it here because, you know, we've done a good amount of work. I mean, that fish took up most of the episode. We got some shading done. I think the bird looks really good. I'm probably going to need to work on the scientist a bit more. The one on the right still looks a bit streaky, but that's okay. But yeah, I think that it looks good. I want to thank all of you who came for sort of sticking with me on this journey. And I guess that's all I can do. So I hope everyone has a good night. See you next week. And yeah.